XRP community, the attacks are here. And today we're going to be discussing why this particular individual, Robert Greenlove, called us retarded for holding the XRP token. Not only drawing a comparison between what Bitcoin and XRP have done over the past 5 years, but the underlying technologies of what these ecosystems are developing. Stablecoins, smart contracts, and tokenized assets, those are the opportunities that exist on the XRPL. We're also going to highlight some of the limitations of the Bitcoin technology. But first, we're going to start this video right here, breaking down exactly why the XRP community can see something many Bitcoiners simply do not. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you guys enjoy this content, smash that like button and subscribe, as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Now today, Robert Greenlove highlights how the XRP community is actually draining liquidity from Bitcoin, not only stopping Bitcoin from thriving, but preventing the growth, just like Gary Gensler did back in 2021. We're going to highlight the indifferences here, and if the XRP community is onto something, that only comes around once in a lifetime. And today is a very special video, so you're going to want to stick around all throughout today's episode to fully understand the war that is happening on Ripple and XRP. And there's a common saying in this market, Johnny, if you come at the king, you best not miss. And for the time being, XRP is king here inside the United States. This is Bloomberg talking about how banks don't want to use Ripple's technology and how the XRP digital asset is nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. You heard that correctly. Here it is.
$1 billion in payments are sent through a vast network of banks every day. Ripple is a tech company in San Francisco that wants to help banks move that cash from point A to point B faster and more cheaply. But Ripple wants to do that by utilizing a digital token called XRP. Joining us now from Los Angeles to discuss is Bloomberg's Matt Leising, who authored a Bloomberg Business Week piece on this. So we've explained what Ripple is and what it wants to do, but the problem here is that its customers, banks, aren't buying into its proposition.
That's right. We spoke to executives at 7 of the largest banks in the world who are at the heart of the correspondent banking system, where you move money from the United States to Africa or Asia, or corporations need to make payments around the world. None of those executives want to use XRP. They don't want to get involved with cryptocurrencies, and moreover, the customers that they serve, like the Caterpillars of the world, the big corporations, they don't have an appetite for it either.
So let's be clear about Ripple's role in this.
So what I think is important about this video here, Johnny, is that, first of all, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt for XRP, it's been a part of this asset class forever. And people understand the war on crypto that we had to overcome during the Biden administration. 4 years of adversity, but the people prevailed. And when you look at who the XRP XRP army really is, it's regular working Americans. It's not the Wall Street suits. It's not the billionaires and the multimillionaires advocating for this asset. Instead, it's people like me, you, and the ones who are watching our video today. And what I think is so important about this very brief clip here is that Bloomberg isn't promoting the message that banks are done. There's a new system coming in. They're telling our listeners, don't invest in this asset. Stay away. It's nefarious. Let's continue.
A year ago, there was this token XRP that was worth less than a penny. At one point early this year, it peaked over $3, a gain that blows Bitcoin completely out of the water. But what your reporting is showing is that while the banks that work with Ripple are interested in some of the Ripple's software and fintech stuff, the currency, they don't have any interest in it.
Correct. And it's interesting, in 2018 in the cryptocurrency world, this is where we are. A private company that controls this digital token that it created many years ago can value that token in the market, and it's worth more than $80 billion. It's like a company has found a way of creating its own money. And what we were interested in is we understand that the value of that digital money is based on the fact that banks and payment companies will use this digital currency to move money around the world, and yet that's not happening.
Matt, walk us through the gap between the perceptions in your reporting and what the company says. How much emphasis is the company putting strategically on the success and adoption of XRP as a sort of common token of currency exchange?
They put a huge amount of effort and into XRP, and the CEO told us that it is absolutely at the core of their strategy. They also say they don't expect the largest banks in the world to jump on board first, that it's going to be a marathon, and that they believe smaller banks around the world and in corridors where, you know, you're not trading the US dollar versus the euro. It might be a Bolivian currency in the Thai baht or something.
And Johnny Crypto, I love the headline here. Ripple wants XRP to be the Bitcoin for banks. And I used this analogy on the Paul Barron Network when he asked me, Abs, can you briefly explain what's the difference between Bitcoin and XRP? And I said, Bitcoin was created to be anti-bank. It was built to be the system outside of the system. What is XRP doing? They are helping the existing systems, the banks that dominate inside the US today and offshore as well, modernize their systems and bring them into the 21st century, enabling cross-border payments for no cost, allowing the tokenization of real-world assets, and of course, tokenizing the US dollar with RLUSD, enabling stablecoin transactions here inside the United States. This is an older video from 2018, but I think the premise is absolutely clear. When you look at the narratives that were being promoted about Ripple back then, 7 years later, many of those false narratives still exist today. And that's why I would love for our listeners, if you believe XRP is built to be the Bitcoin for the banks, show us some love, smash that like button, and be sure to stick around to the end of the episode because we're going to highlight several connections here that go to show just how closely Ripple is working, not only with United States banks, but also with the United States government. Floor is yours.
Well, you know, Abs, it's funny. Like when you listen to that video and you watch it back from 2018, it's so funny how it's like, well, no banks are taking it on. Well, first of all, Abs, it takes a long time for adoption to happen. And if you remember, Ripple kind of announced to the world in 2017-ish that they were, you know, going to be trying to provide a cross-border payment solution for banks to solve that. There is no way in the world by 2018 that would have been happening. Okay, so first of all, let's just put things in perspective. But we do know that there are banks out there that were looking at it and trialing it back then. But of course, he said we talked to the 7 largest banks. Well, guess what, Abs? When you start with a new technology, and he said it later on in the video, you don't go to the big boys. They're not going to take it. It doesn't work that way. You start with the small fish. You go to the little banks. You try the technology. You prove it out small, and then you grow bigger and bigger. And because what happens is once you start proving out with the small fish that it works, you think the big fish want to lose to the small fish? You think the big fish want the small fish to grow into big fish? No, they absolutely do not. And then they adopt. I know. I'm in technology. I literally am going through this right now with a product that I can't say much about that we're developing apps. We're doing the same thing. We're going to the small fish, and eventually we're going to go to the big fish. It's literally the same approach. So, for all you XRP holders, you need to understand, don't get worried if you don't see. First of all, I know there's a lot of FUD going around right now. So you're going to hear about FUD. That's going to scare you. Then you're going to put in your brain, you go, oh, yeah, you know what? They're kind of right. I don't see them working with like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and all the big banks. Like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. That's not who you want to see them working with right now. You want to see them working with the small banks, the little guys, or like what they did. They bought Hidden Roads, or they're going to demonstrate their technology through that. We just saw a Chinese company mention they're going to be working with them. We saw a Japanese company say they're going to be investing. That's the kind of stuff you want to see, all these little pieces coming together, all different trials of all these different things. And then eventually, when the time is right, and Ripple says, hey, well, now we got 7, 8, 9, 10 use case examples, real world working in the field. And then what happens, Abs, in technology, you create a paper, a white paper that shows what you've done. And then you bring that to the big companies. And they're like, oh, let me see what you've done with these guys. And bang, then they all want in. So
here it is. Here's something more important, guys. Johnny talked about it. A lot of these big banks, they're not publicly acknowledging this technology yet. But when you read their documents, they've been working on this in the background, dating all the way back to the mid-2015, 2016 timeframe. JP Morgan released a report, I believe this is on October of last year, where they cite Ripple is a heavyweight in the age of central bank digital currencies. This is in the official report out of JP Morgan, which you're seeing on screen. We also have this article from back in 2021, where a JP Morgan executive stated, if Ripple wins the SEC lawsuit, XRP is poised for significant adoption. And Johnny, I believe we've overcome all that adversity here in 2025. 19 different XRP ETFs. RLUSD stablecoin is live. Clarity Act is being developed. Genius Act is officially passed. And now, with the lawsuit being over here inside the United States, these 1,700 NDAs and over 300 public companies that are already working with Ripple can onboard clients in a way we've never seen before. Nothing is preventing the development of XRP or Ripple products inside the United States going forward. So as we go through the later portion of this episode and we show some of our listeners the newer FUD that is circulating on social media, focus on the facts, focus on the data. XRP is here to stay. Many of these short-term narratives are not. If you're enjoying this content, smash that like button and subscribe. But we're going to dive right into our next topic.
Right, it's the same shit. They're just lying to people. They're creating this pyramid scheme and trying to dump their bags on people forever.
Yeah, and I would argue that if Bitcoin didn't exist, the government would shut something like this down.
Yeah,
this is illegal counterfeiting.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that the reason that Gary Gensler hasn't gone after all of these cryptocurrencies, I mean, if he would have said a couple of years ago, hey, these are all unregistered securities, we're going to go after every single one of them. I don't care if it takes the government 100 years. What would happen? Everything would go into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then maybe you have a few idiots that are like, oh, we're going to take it over and it's going to rip. But it's, I think it's a psyop. I think that there's really important people who understand that the game theory is playing out. You can't change the protocol. How do you stop the Bitcoin price from going through the roof?
Yeah.
You let people get wrecked buying shit like this.
Yes, which is why XRP is for retards, and it is retarded.
And
it's
people
causing retardation, actually, of Bitcoin adoption. Now, it's hard to say, right? You can't rerun these experiments. Would Bitcoin adoption be going on faster if there weren't all this market cap in XRP? Maybe, maybe not. But we can say that every retard that falls for the XRP psyop and puts their purchasing power in XRP rather than Bitcoin, well, that's non-accretive to Bitcoin. Although in the long run, when this thing blows up, as it inevitably will, it will trigger a stampede of people out of XRP into Bitcoin. So although it might retard Bitcoin adoption in the short run, it's likely to amplify it in the long run. This is one of those, you get into these weird scenario spaces where you realize like everything is good for Bitcoin.
I was just going to say that. And all roads lead to Bitcoin.
Yeah, you just can't avoid it.
Well, here's what I would say is a serious reaction, Johnny Crypto, is number one, when you're talking about the narrative that Bitcoin has versus some of these other digital asset ecosystems, well, Bitcoin has the store of value narrative, no question about it. I would also give Bitcoin a total free pass. Governments all around the world, central banks, financial companies, they've already stated that Bitcoin is an asset that will be used in the 21st century. When you start talking about the underlying utility of a lot of these blockchains, whether it's the speed and scalability, whether it's the validation mechanism, whether it's the ability for banks to even want to use this technology, that opens up a whole new box of conversations. And I think one of the conversations that needs to be had is that Bitcoin cannot have smart contracts, is not scalable for daily transactions, isn't able to tokenize real world assets. And most importantly, guys, you cannot build on Bitcoin. You need these other ecosystems like an Ethereum, Solana, and of course an XRP in order to develop real world use cases and improve the existing systems that we have today. If you agree, smash that like button. If you disagree, leave a comment in chat. Johnny Crypto, what are your thoughts?
On a serious note, when you watch something like that, right? Here's what you recognize right away. You just have a series of people that are so full of hopium. They had this concept that Bitcoin back in 28 was going to break away from the financial system. Everybody's tired of the corrupt monetary fake fiat system. I get it. And Bitcoin was the savior, Abs. You have to understand the mentality. You have to go all the way back to 2008 and understand that when you're thinking, hey, everybody, you were a little baby, right? You were walking around, you were out of diapers then. But people lost a lot of money, Abs. Look at the stock market. It crashed dramatically. Big banks were failing and we had to bail them out. Okay. I mean, the world was going to shit. And Bitcoin was like, wow, this could be the saving grace. So now these guys, fast forward 20 years later, are still hanging on to this dream, this hopium that Bitcoin is going to, get rid of the financial system and replace it, which you and I both know nowadays, it's never going to happen. It's not scalable. It can't do that. But these guys still refuse to open up their mind and realize there are going to be better technologies that are suitable that can do that. And XRP is going to be one of those that's going to solve multiple real world use cases. Okay. So, I feel bad for people like that because they're so stuck in this opium of thinking this dream of what it was going to be is there. It's not. It's never going to happen. You already said what governments are doing. They're going to pull it as a store, a digital store value reserve, something like that. but it's never, ever, ever going to replace the monetary system like they're hoping. And because people are putting money into other assets, they're pissed off about it because you heard him. He goes, I want all the money to go into Bitcoin so people will use it. It's just not going to happen. And so what do? Rather than just recognizing there are going to be technologies that are coexist, they just attack the other technology. I mean, dude, that's seriously like 8th grader stuff.
Truth of the matter, Johnny, is that they were actually advocating for what Gary Gensler did, which was the crusade against digital assets for the entire Biden administration. But that did not stop XRP. And here we are today looking at a project that during the Biden administration was trading at about 40 cents. We are sitting at nearly $3 here in the summer of 2025. And when you look at the actual percentage gains over the past year to date, 23% for Bitcoin, 33% for XRP. Over the past 12 months, 100% for Bitcoin, 530% for XRP. 3 years, 500% for Bitcoin, 800% for XRP. And over the past 5 years, nearly 1,200% for Bitcoin and 1,300% for XRP. So there's two real narratives that are happening here. First of all, there's the Bitcoin community who's had a ton of success. And I think the more successful you get, sometimes the more arrogant you get, the more certain you become that you're going to be successful. And the Bitcoin community, they're here to stay. I am part of the Bitcoin community. But when you look at what some of these other assets have done since the election of Donald Trump, Hedera, Cardano, XRP, Chainlink, these are legitimate ecosystems. And if you still look at the crypto market today, with all of the developments, all the real world utility, the regulation, the Wall Street demand, the stable coins, the smart contracts, and you still just see Bitcoin and then everything else, you need to go to a re-education course, and you shouldn't be criticizing others for the research that they've done to discover just how powerful many of our favorite technologies are.
But this is what happens, Abs, when somebody who is latched onto something has no argument for the other side. So what do? Rather than try to have a conversation and talk about it, they just bash you. They call you names, and they you know, it's childhood stuff. They really don't have a real argument because at the end of the day, I think deep down inside, they understand there is value there, but you're never, ever, ever going to hear Robert Breedlove ever say that. He's never going to say it. But someday when XRP is, you know, $100 or higher, but to me, it's disgusting that we're still in this maximalism thought mindset. And I want to say we, because I think we've opened up. Look, you and I own Bitcoin. I mean, we opened up like we own multiple coins. We are utility maxis. And to me, that's the smart way to bring it back to our people. If you want to invest in the future technologies, guys, if you're picking one horse, you're in trouble. I'm telling you right now, you're in trouble. If you're just thinking there's going to be one coin to rule them all, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that ain't happening, okay? Guys, you need to understand there are going to be multiple blockchains that are going to serve multiple use cases, and they're going to appreciate in value. There's going to be a ton of money to be made here, Abs, in the AI and big data space, in the real world asset and token category, in the enterprise payment solutions, you know, and even in Bitcoin itself. So there are multiple ways to play this. You should not be thinking, well, it's Bitcoin. You heard what he said. Oh, when XRP crashes, the money's going to go to Bitcoin. Dude, wake up. It's not going to happen.
Here's the truth, guys. I also believe that a lot of people who don't have the fundamental knowledge that our community does about why these technologies are important, they hear these conversations and they take them as truth. They take them as gospel. That's why we have to provide the opposite end of this. So just from a rational perspective, remember, Bitcoin is here to stay. Bitcoin will have its place in digital assets, probably driving the majority of liquidity, at least for the foreseeable future. And what do I mean by that? Well, looking at the market today, 58% is Bitcoin, right? So I think for the time being, Bitcoin is the most important digital asset. After the Clarity Act, ETFs are passed, stable coins are being used everywhere, and all of these different applications like Amazon and Apple and Meta and Google, they all have digital wallets. They all have the ability to transfer digital tokens. That is coming after the United States regulates this market here in 2025, Johnny. And we know this not only from listening to politicians, we've listened to industry leaders like Charles Hoskinson talk about the relationship he's been able to build with executives at Apple and Amazon in the development of these technologies. So this isn't a speculative asset class anymore. The products have been developed behind the scenes. We're waiting for the go-ahead when regulation is launched towards the back end of this year. So when you ask yourself, what's really happening here? I think it's a final fight from the Bitcoin community to push people away from these emerging assets. And the last point, Johnny, before I kick it back to you, is that we are still so early. And I want to highlight that really quick. It only takes 2,400 units of XRP to be in the top 10% of token holders on the planet. It only takes 10,000 to be in the top 4%. It only takes 50,000 tokens, which is nearly $150,000. It's a large amount of assets, Johnny. But just 12 months ago, this was less than a $25,000 investment. And so that's why I think these conversations are so valuable. And we have to point out the flaws in the narrative. It's not just because we don't like what he's saying and we own the XRP token. It's that I think he's pushing people away from a massive opportunity. And a couple of years from now, we're going to look at data like this and say, oh my goodness, if only I had bought more.
That's 100% right, Abs. And you know what? That is his goal. His goal is to drive people back to Bitcoin. So he's doing everything to create FUD in that space. But the reality is, when we bring it back to the real world selves here, let's talk a little bit about XRP, right? We know, first of all, Matt, cross-border payment solution. No brainer, right? It's designed for that. It's basically designed to eliminate the 3 to 7 day settlement period of time that it takes for money to be transferred from one place to another to 3 seconds. Huge use case. You don't think there's any value there? Well, how about we pull up the article? Chinese company just literally signed a big deal with XRP right now because they want that technology, okay? So that's one. They just signed a massive deal with Ripple to be able to handle that, okay? Second, we know that there's an AMM marketplace that they're creating. Third, we know that they created this stablecoin to be able to handle tons of transactions, onboarding and offboarding technologies, crypto from exchanges and other areas, right? Money markets. Fourth, tokenization play, right? So, I mean, there's so many use cases here that XRP solves. To sit here and go on the air and say XRP is a Ponzi scheme, basically what he said, right? He called it a fraud. He basically said we're retards, we're being fooled into thinking it has value. So here's what he's trying to say. So he knows that Ripple owns 43 billion more tokens. And what he's trying to say is it's in Ripple's best interest to continue to make people to think XRP has value, because if we continue to think it's value, we'll keep buying it and they can keep dumping their 43 billion on us, okay? Now, if that were true, right? First of all, we're not retards. You and I and everybody else would know it, because we'd be like, wait a minute. Why is nobody signing deals with Ripple? Why is nobody adopting the XRP ledger? Why aren't we seeing any activity here, right? If those were the signs, like, we wouldn't be here. You and I would be like, whoa, this thing's got nobody picking it up. Nobody's interested in it. And they're just trying to dump. I would agree with him if that were the case. But Abs, how many times on this show do we continue to show more and more use case adoptions? Every single day. You had a Japanese company that said they were investing, I forgot how many, 2.2 billion yen, I think it's like $17 million, into this technology. You got the Chinese company that just adopted it. We know SBI. We know the country of Palau is testing it.
More importantly, Johnny, is that Ripple is actually using a lot of the revenue that they're generating to go out and acquire companies that are doing real world business, just like Hidden Road's a primary example of this, where they're doing $3 trillion annually in total volume. RLUSD is now available for every single one of those products. And now RLUSD, the majority of it is still minted on Ethereum, but this guy criticized everything but Bitcoin anyway, so it still fits into the same discussion. Correct. Then you have the Rails acquisition, which I believe was about $150 million, if I'm remembering correctly. They do 10% of all B2B stablecoin payments worldwide. So Ripple's going out and acquiring these companies that are essential to real world businesses that are slowly going to be migrating traditional transactions with Visa, with the SWIFT system, and putting them onto a blockchain product like Ripple Payments is able to offer. If you guys are enjoying this content, smash that like button and let us know some of your thoughts in chat. Paul Barron had a great answer to this question, Johnny. Why are so many people attacking XRP? Here's what Paul Barron had to say.
Every time we start to see certain camps start to attack the XRP camps, which is so ironic that this is so tribal in crypto in general, is that the camps that attack, whether they're bot driven or they're actually human driven, it creates a response mechanism from the XRP community, which enhances the algorithm and now has almost like a bit of an incentive structure. So every negative thread on XRP generates 10x in algorithmic engagement. So every time that we get a Bitcoiner, an ETH Maxi, a Solana, it doesn't matter, you name it, one community of that, they attack XRP. We're watching this on the MSI, and it only amplifies the message of XRP. And I'm like, what are these guys not getting? What?
So we talked about this during our podcast a couple of weeks ago, Johnny, where Paul has a specific indicator that talks about engagement on social media for particular tokens. And what he said is the XRP community has way more engagement than even Bitcoin. So we're in a class of our own when it comes to social media. And I think a lot of people like this person, Robert Greenlove, knows that. And so the opposite end of the coin is that a lot of people may not even believe these statements that they're sharing out loud, but they're going to get the clicks, they're going to get the views, they're going to get the followers. And so they're willing to say some disingenuous things in order to get there. I believe Paul Barron is onto something extremely accurate here. We saw it with Chainlink just a couple of weeks ago, Johnny, where Chainlink, out of nowhere, influencers all across X, all across TikTok, began criticizing XRP and saying Chainlink was going to take over. When you look at these coordinated attacks, there's a part of you that thinks they're organic, but then you listen to evidence like this and you got to think, people know the XRP community is the largest, most outgoing community in crypto today. Why not use that narrative to benefit some of these other blockchain products? And that's what I think these companies are doing. What are some of your thoughts on this?
You know, Abs, I think at the end of the day, you're always going to have haters. There's going to be a group of haters that are going to hate. And the reality is, you know, Coach used to talk about this all the time. Haters actually drive up your algorithm. It's not a bad thing. Controversy is a good thing. I think debate is always a great thing. You always end up in a better place when you can have a conversation and talk about the two sides. I would love to talk to that Robert Breedwood, or, you know, if he wants to come on the show, I'd love to talk to him and understand why he can't see the live use cases, Abs, that are being adopted right in front of our eyes. Now, Hidden Roads, they're going to use them to show an example. So that's a little different because they bought them. But the other ones, the Chinese partnership, the Japanese partnership, those companies are doing it because they see the value. Cheaper, better products, right? So for me, like, listen, people are going to hate. And whenever they get a chance to take a jab at XRP, if they're not an XRP holder, like obviously when they started hearing Chainlink was going to do it, and now you're hearing, you know, Google's coming up with a play for cross-border payment, you're going to hear more of this, right? But the reality is Google's so far behind, like it's not even, they're going to have so much to catch up, right? But that's just going to happen, Abs, because at the end of the day, right now, people are not valuing the technology. They don't understand it. I'm in technology, so I can understand it. People are valuing crypto on how quick they can get rich. I'm sorry, but that's it. You talk to most people and you ask them why they're here. Oh, I want to get rich quick. It's just a fact. I know. I've interviewed people. I talk to them, and that's what they say. At first, that's how they came here. Then when they start doing research and learning, they're like, oh, wow, there's really something here. But the problem is that people want to get rich quick, and they don't like if something else, i.e. XRP, or another token is going to take away for that ability. I mean, you literally heard that guy say it. He literally said, oh, yeah, XRP is retarding. In that case, he wasn't calling us retards, but he's saying it was retarding the growth of Bitcoin. You heard the mindset. Now, just take that mindset and apply it to any other coin. The Link people are thinking that. The Solana people are thinking that. And so the reality is, I think for us, what's cool is we understand there's a whole world here to play. There are sectors of this economy that are going to grow massively. XRP is going to grow. Link is going to grow. AVAX is going to grow. Solana is going to grow. Ondo is going to grow, right? Why would you not want to have a piece of all that? But this guy does not care about helping his people. He cares about one thing in his case, which is Bitcoin, and that's why you're hearing that. But to me, Abs, you can't get hung up in the noise. You just gotta be open-minded, and hopefully you're listening to shows like ours where we are never going to bash other tokens. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tell you what I think is good or bad technology-wise. Do you know how Bitcoin's going to go faster, Abs? Let's face it. The whole world knows about Bitcoin now, okay? BlackRock has introduced the world. The stock market's promoting it. It's got all the cash it's going to get. The next level up for Bitcoin to grow is government adoption. Now, will we get it? I don't know. Senator Loomis has her bill. Trump has already said we're not going to use government money to buy Bitcoin. There isn't going to be a Bitcoin reserve unless, of course, that bill goes through, right? Other than the confiscation of stuff. So my point is, there's not a lot of upside right now for Bitcoin. So if you're a Bitcoin maxi, you're sitting there looking at it going, whoa, what's going on here? The money that we should be getting, you said it, 58% of money is in Bitcoin. That means the other 42% is in everything else. They don't like that. All right. So just understand, if you're new to this and you're watching our show and you're wondering, why are they calling us that? That's why, guys. They're upset that 42% of the money isn't in their pockets because they want it all. And it ain't going to happen. In fact, Abs, I'm going to make the argument, and I'll kick it over to you, that 58% number is only going to continue to go down as the world recognizes. Because listen, buddy, you now have institutions coming in, smart money, who know technologies are going to make their products cheaper, better, and they know Bitcoin isn't going to do that for them, you think a big institution, they'll buy it for like making a treasury, but they're going to invest in technology that are going to make their land cheaper, better. And that means, I think, in the long run, look for the 58 to come down and the 42 to go up. And for the 42% to go up, it's going to be mainly only the big ones that make sense, the top 10 or 20 or 30, maybe top 100. So mark your calendar down. That's what my prediction is over the next 3 to 5 years.
And here's what keeps me excited, Johnny, is that I believe most of these projects are going to have a higher return on investment than Bitcoin. It's not that I think Bitcoin's going to underperform. It's not that I think Bitcoin's going away. It's that I think a project like Bitcoin can go up 35% a year, where some of these altcoins are going to do 7, 8, 900% in a single year. We've seen it before, and we're going to see it again, guys. If you're more bullish on XRP than Bitcoin, show us some love, smash that like button, and leave a comment underneath the video. We're going to do a quick XRP price chart update, because what are we seeing this morning? Once again, people are overestimating what can happen in the short term and underestimating what can happen for XRP over these next few months. For the short term, we have to keep an eye on $2.65. We must hold the $2.65 range in order to keep the bullish momentum that we're in today. So making the assumption that we hold that 265, we have the Fed reducing rates in September. That's most likely. We have the Clarity Act coming in the back end of the fall. That is also most likely. And we have the ETF set to be approved mid-October for Litecoin, Solana, Cardano, and of course, XRP. That is going to fuel this market in a way that we've never seen before. And there are massive predictions, like $5 billion in inflows coming into XRP in just the first 4 weeks. Here's what I would say. If you're newer to the crypto market, don't overemphasize some of this short-term news. Who cares what Robert Greenlove has to say? Who cares what happens with Bitcoin over these next couple of weeks? The macro movements are more important. And for the time being, we are in a bull market, and many of these projects are set to break all-time highs towards the back end of 2025. But Johnny, when you look at the XRP price chart, this is what most people are emphasizing on. October. We need to see what happens in the month of October. Up until then, up until about mid-September, or if the Fed reduces rates in the first week, we're really just playing a waiting game here. And it's already August 31st, September 1st when we're recording this. I think it's more than likely that things get really, really exciting in a very quick amount of time. If they do not, use that as an opportunity to double down on the assets that you understand, because the evidence tells us there are trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars sitting on the sidelines all around the world, ready to enter these digital asset ecosystems. And we're focused on the United States because that's going to be very important. But whether it's China or Japan or the UAE or South American countries, adoption's happening all over the place. And XRP is one of the main projects benefiting from that adoption thus far. Johnny, what do you think?
I mean, Abs, if it's just to build on your point, if you don't believe that, I mean, just go look at the number of filings for XRP ETFs, guys. There is freaking 19 of them. Go look at Bitcoin. It was nowhere near it. ETH was nowhere near it. I mean, so you don't think the smart money doesn't know where there's interest, or what folks want, what their customers want? Then you got another thing coming. I mean, the bottom line, Abs, is there is going to be price appreciation in a lot of these. And guys like Robert Breedwell is going to scare people away from things like, you know, I mean, go look at the AI place. There's so many. AI, I think, is going to be a hot category this bull run, Abs. I think, to your point earlier, there's going to be 10, 20, 30x plays in there easily, even higher, that people are now going to maybe not even consider, because they'll be, oh, I got to get into Bitcoin. This guy's saying everything else a retard, you know? And so, no, that's not the way to think about it, guys. Forget what you're hearing. Ignore the noise. Understand there is a new technology coming, many, many different plays. Most of them will go away, but there will be some that are going to make it. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, Abs. And, you know, when you look at that chart, man, when you just showed me that chart, I can't tell you how excited I got with that Bitcoin price chart. When you look at that bullpen that it's starting to form right now, again, and it looks like a nice solid base around 2. Can you bring that chart back up again? I think we're looking at around.
This is XRP.
Yeah, the XRP. Look at that. It's forming a nice pennant around 280, 275. You look at that base. Every time it keeps penning, right? And Abs, just for full thing, just, you know, I bought something the other day again around this 280 range. I mean, because the reality is, you know, I'd rather take out of inflationary assets like fiat and put it into something like this. I mean, remember, there's 19 ETFs coming, my friend. So when people say, Johnny, why are you buying at 280? Why? Because there's 19 ETFs coming and approximately $8 billion of inflows coming. Multiply that times up. Let's be conservative, 100x factor, guys. That's a potential 800, almost $1 trillion coming to the market cap. That brings XRP around $17 to $20. We're at 280. So there you go. There's the answer. So guys, not for a cheap plug-in, but make sure you have an exit plan. Click the link below. Go set up your account and build yourself an exit plan. You can get Merlin for free because you're going to want to have a plan. When this thing's sitting at 5, 10, and that's climb up to $20, you're going to get very nervous. Make sure you have a plan, take some profits, and then leave the rest for the future. It's going to be a great time ahead. And you know what? I'm going to be proud to be an XRP retard.
Johnny, you've always been one minus the XRP. And if you guys enjoyed this content, smash that like button, and we'll see you all in the next one.